There's usually not many. There's usually like 10, stuff like that. So there's usually not a lot. Um, but the reality is, if you guys are at this point, one of the things I like about what we're doing with the offering these conferences now pretty regularly is, track 5. I mean, if you wanted to take it, you had to wait a while. Um, so there's usually not many. There's usually 10, which is actually nice for our group. It gives you guys a lot of time to interact with me, ask questions. Some of the other tracks are significantly larger. Like one of them is 180.
Oh
And
my.
so you think about the opportunity for personal interaction, and that's not going to happen very much. I mean, there is an opportunity, but it's obviously very different.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine if there's one facilitator talking to 100 some people, that's a lot.
Yeah, so most folks won't be able to obviously participate in any sort of meaningful fashion other than maybe a question or two. And yeah, so hey guys, welcome back. I'm glad you guys made it. I already know the emotional experience that you guys have if you watched both of those videos. You feel overwhelmed. That was a lot of theological knowledge for you. If you guys have any immediate questions, feel free to post in the chat, raise your hands. If you weren't here for the last live, Q&A type thing that we did, the intro, what I said I will usually use our times for is to communicate as a grader. So I grade for ACBC. I'm also able to do fellow supervision. I'm just going to share with you guys some of the things that I noticed folks miss, or the important things. Obviously, that gets covered a little bit in lecture. But if you guys do have other questions, you say, man, after all that, I got a question. Now's the time to feel free to ask it. Usually I'll just walk through maybe all the questions or most of the questions and try to highlight some things. So that's my practice. If you guys have specifics, you feel free to do that, and I can pause answering those directly. Well, let me just say a word about question number 1. Most folks spend a lot of time on question 1. It's an important question to get right. So if you're going to say, is it okay if I spend a little bit of time on question number 1 and the other ones? Absolutely. It's important not only because it sets the ground for the exam, and it's, obviously one of the most important questions we're going to ask you. It's important because it sort of sets the tone for the grader. When you think about, if you're grading an exam and question 1's really bad, you're going to be thinking, oh boy, what do we got here? So Bill asked a question here. Do we need to cite the Greek sometimes? Is that expected? Absolutely not. We will never ask you to do that. But if you have that knowledge, that's fine. That's beyond what ACBC would be expecting by any stretch of the imagination. The other thing I'd say is some folks are trained in the original languages, some are not. If you don't have training, I would recommend that you not do any of that sort of stuff. Sometimes you can get yourself into more trouble than anything else. I'm not saying that's you, Bill, but some of the exams I've graded, people have tried to do things, and it's clear to me that it's beyond their skills. And that's not trying to be mean. It's just beyond their skill. And that's actually led to rewrites for them.
So you're saying my 3 semesters of Greek 40 years ago, I probably shouldn't try it.
I'm just saying it may not, and I can speak from personal experience. It's not always like riding a bike. Yeah. Now, on question number 1, there is a comment here about the original manuscripts being recorded. If that's a confusing conversation to you, if you're like, what does he mean? What is all this conversation about the original manuscripts? Don't feel like you need to include any discussion about the original manuscripts. Or really, when you think about 2 Timothy 3 and its relation to 1 Peter 2, 2 Peter chapter 1, sorry, a bit dyslexic. 2 Peter chapter 1, right? That's explaining how did inspiration work, right? We believe that. And those 2 verses, I would tell you, those are essential for your answer. So encourage you, make sure that you have that. A lot of the other answer in question 1 is pretty self-explanatory. My encouragement to you, like I said in the beginning, follow the follow one of the outline paths that we give you. We give you a couple options there when it comes to proving inerrancy. You could choose which one you feel better about. Personally, I tend to think that arguing either one or two is the easiest way to do it. I'd encourage you to consider that. Question 2 also is one of those that folks do struggle a bit on. I would actually encourage you to use Dr. Pierre's definition there. It's in your notes about what Scripture is talking about being sufficient. Understanding that that's what we're talking about when we talk about sufficiency. So I'd encourage you guys to make sure that you're defining what you mean by sufficiency and then explaining. You can even use Dr. Pierre explaining what you mean. But here's one of the big cruxes when you think about that question about taking the argument of an integrationist or Christian psychologist. You need to use their argument as it pertains to the Scriptures. So you can't talk about, well, here's what integrationists are all about, or here's what Christian psychologists are all about. You need to lock on to their argument and why the Bible is not enough for counseling. Now we give you some of those arguments, but I can't tell you how many times I've had to ask folks to work on question 2 because they didn't give me the argument of those different counseling type folks as it relates to the Scriptures. So if you're taking notes about common mistakes, and that's what I'm going to be giving you guys a lot of, my encouragement to you after you write question 2 is, where is the argument that is being made for these particular folks in these particular passages? Question number 3 is pretty straightforward, pretty easy on, continuing revelation, etc. Most folks already have a position staked out. If you don't, I will tell you this. It's in here for a particular reason, and namely, they want to understand, even if you are a continuist, they want to understand where do you believe the authority of the Bible lies in context to special revelation. God told me so. So if you do take the position of a continuist, and you can, you're going to have to defend and argue how is the Scripture still sufficient, authoritative, and all we need for counseling. So I just want to highlight that one for you guys too. And then question number 4, general revelation versus specific revelation. That's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Most folks do pretty well on that. Most folks do pretty well on questions 5, talking about common grace as relates to the secular psychologist's ability to understand information. You have to highlight at some point, and we try to draw this attention for you. Okay, well, where is the limit of this common grace? Why is it important that they would need special salvation? And we do that right there on page at least 19 in my notes, where it talks about the common grace doesn't allow the unregenerate to represent their human condition accurately, namely that they're in need of a savior. And number 2, they lack the interpretive grid to rightly evaluate and prescribe solutions. Now, that doesn't take up a whole lot of space in your notes, but those things are essential. You got to help us understand, why is this question here? Why are we talking about these things? And those are the main. What is this question really about? The secular counselor doesn't have the right grid, and they can't accurately point to the right solution. So again, as you guys have your notes and you're marking them up, if you're trying to write, these things are essential. If I don't get this, I'm going to be in trouble. But make sure you do that. Anytime a question asks for a definition, make sure that you said, this is what it is. So question number 6, what is noetic effect of sin? You better define it. You have to describe, what is this thing, this condition? And I can't tell you how many people I just have to send back to, especially when we get into maybe some of the attributes of God. Well, you didn't tell me what this is. You didn't define, or another question, what is anger? So I encourage you guys, if it's asking for a definition, make sure that you actually provide that. Question number 7, I assume everybody here is a Trinitarian. You can't be an ACBC if you're not a Trinitarian. There are 3 types of marks on the grade. There's pass, there's rewrite, and there's fatal error. Fatal error means you're done. And if a person is going to take a non-Trinitarian point of view, they cannot be accepted into ACBC counseling. My assumption is you guys are Trinitarians, and now you just need some help explaining and arguing what the passage is talking about there. And so, most folks don't find that one pretty tricky, pretty difficult. And then question number 8 on explaining the attributes of God, like I said, make sure that you define it. Where most people fail is either they missed the definition, they just talked about stuff for a while, but they didn't, okay, what is this? What is that? But then they don't also bring in the implications for counseling. So why are we talking about wrath in a biblical counseling exam? Why are we talking about holiness in a biblical counseling exam? Why are we talking about God's omniscience, his omnipresence, his omnipotence? There's a particular reason, and you need to flesh out for the counseling exam, what does this have to do with counseling? Why are we talking about that? So I know that was fast, guys. You may need to even rewatch this if you missed some of that stuff. It's recorded. It'll be posted for you guys later. Those are some of the most common things that go into this. Let me make one quick, I'm going to share my screen here just so you guys are able to navigate this for tomorrow. But let me make sure you guys at least see this. You guys are familiar with this page, the Event Squid page. It's how you got here. But let me at least show you right here. You got to follow the little tabs up here. We're in weekend 1. We're on Friday. Tomorrow, we're going to be on Saturday. You're going to have to click through these various tabs. Now, this meeting is the same link. So we're always using the same link. So you should be fine. If you don't want to save the link, you can always navigate back here. Whenever we're together, when it says live, welcome, live Q&A, it's the same links. But to get to these various things, you're going to have to click through these various days. And so that's important. And make sure you don't get lost. Now that's all can you believe that was 15 minutes, guys? That was all the comments, the questions that I tend to bring up for folks. Do you guys have any questions for me as it relates to the process, the plan, or the exam? Anybody got anything?
Yeah, just where do I find the style guide, I guess you call it, for the exam? I've looked for that, and is that only available after we've completed phase 1?
No. Have you registered? Have you paid? Have you signed up through ACBC? Not paid. Have you signed up through ACBC's website?
Yes.
Okay. So have you downloaded the exam templates?
No.
Okay, so you need to download the exam template. It has all of the questions in a Word document that you can just type right on. They actually want you to do that. I think that when you upload it, they actually run your exams through like a cheating software or something like that. So they want it all in that Word document type thing. You can't submit it in a PDF. And it will have the template in there. You just write in there. When it comes to citations and all that other stuff, there's really not they demand that you use Chicago style 19. There's none of that. I tell folks the easiest thing to do is a footnote, but all of that stuff is in the ACBC exam and you can download it.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, guys? I know it's getting late. You had a.
I kind of have a question along the lines of what he's asking regarding what do the questions have to look like as far as I'm so used to, like, I've gone to seminary and stuff, so writing papers, or you just basically in bold, the attribute of the mercy of God in bold, and then define it with a script reference. It doesn't have to be a paragraph. It could be a sentence, possibly.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
So and it could be your definition. You could borrow someone's definition. I tend to think when people use stylistic tools like that, I'll mention this as essential for one of the ones on the counseling exam. anything that you can do stylistically to make it easy for your grader to read through, like for example, defining the attributes of God, anger, underlined, bold, colon, or wrath, you know what I'm saying? If you do that, you're only going to make your grader happy. Some of the guys that have come through and I've had to grade, they have advanced training, and they're used to writing in a form like that where everything is written in a paragraph. You would never use any of those stylistic tools, and that's fine. It's just that's not what this is. So any stylistic tools that you have like that, feel free to use. Your grader is only going to thank you.
Okay, and then also the questions should not be longer than two pages, right? A page to
Correct.
2 pages.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. I mean, I had one guy, one that I was actually thinking of when I mentioned that last. His answers were 4, 5, 6 pages, and I felt sad, but I had to send it back to him and said, look, if something bleeds over a little bit, I'm not. But this is double, triple the page length. You need to resubmit your entire exam within the parameters. I cannot approve this. I can't read it. We're not talking about it was supposed to be a page and a half, and you kind of went to 2 in a few sentences. You blew through it, and I didn't like doing it, but I had to. So yeah. And there are some questions, like for example, question 8, you might run a little bit long on. The grader knows that. Question 1, you may run a little bit long on, but if you run long on every question, that's a problem. Remember, they're trying to ensure orthodoxy. We're talking about a seal. We're not talking about ceiling. We're talking about a floor here. People write entire books on inerrancy. We're just trying to make sure that everybody is orthodox who's joining our organization. Great questions.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, I'm going to assume that nobody else has anything. If you do, post, email me. We're going to be back here tomorrow at 8 a.m. sharp. Hopefully you can be there. And we'll do a similar thing that we've done tonight. You do have some time tonight. You have something called Guided Computer Lab. You may not have the energy. You may not have the time to take a crack at some of those questions. That's the point of those sessions, is it's an opportunity for you, a structured time that we're giving you to do that. And then as you do that, this is the time for you to email me when you have a question. Say, hey, can you look at my question 1, etc. Use those times. Don't use those times. You guys are in control. I would encourage you to figure out what system works for you to work on this exam, whether it's writing and listening to lectures in between, but whatever it is, find the system that works for you. Okay, guys, have a blessed evening. I'll see you tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp. Take care.
See you.
Bye-bye.